Hi, welcome back to my channel. And today I'm counting down my top 10 80s action movies. It was the great decade of the blockbuster, the 80s. I was a teenager at the time, and in my childhood in the 70s, apparently George Lucas and Steven Spielberg had changed cinema. They didn't really. They just found how to make commercial cinema again and get bums back on seats. But it was the great age of the blockbuster, and every summer and every Christmas time there'd be tons of these big action movies with great special effects in the cinemas, and I enjoyed watching them as much as the next person. So here is my top 10. I've cheated a little bit in places, but you'll see what I mean. At number 10 is RoboCop. Now, I had a bit of a downer on RoboCop in the 80s for two reasons. First of all, surprisingly, for someone who likes extreme films, I found the violence a bit over the top. And RoboCop 2, if you've ever seen RoboCop 2, the violence in RoboCop 2 is horrendous. It actually made me feel a bit nauseous. I'm a bit of a wimp. But it's a really good action film and very witty and very funny, but the violence got to me. The second thing was, I'm an old Judge Dredd fan, a bit of a 2000 AD fan. 2000 AD, for those who don't know, is a British science fiction comic, and Judge Dredd is the main character, really. He's the most successful strip, and he's this 21st century lawman in this gigantic New York that's spread across the whole eastern side of the continent. And really, Robocop is a crib of Judge Dredd. And they didn't really acknowledge that, which kind of annoyed me. So I had a bit of a downer on Robocop. But it is a very entertaining movie. Paul Verhoeven is a very entertaining director. And it does feature one of the great scenes of 1980s cinema, which is Ed 309. You know, you have 20 seconds to comply. And then he just machine guns that bloke to death, which is one of the great moments of horror satire in movies. I think it's worth the entrance price alone. Personally, though, I preferred the follow up Paul Verhoeven movie, Total Recall, which technically came out in 1990, but it's an 80s action movie in all but name, really. This was based on a Philip K. Dick novella called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. And again, I had a bit of a downer on the movie at the time. I was a bit of a priggish, teenager, really. But I was very serious about science fiction. And I really hated the fact in the 80s that the two role models for guys in the 80s were Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Total meatheads, total grunts. I liked Doctor Who. I liked, intelligent, eccentric role models. I didn't want these meathead role models. And I was furious that they'd taken this complex Philip K. Dick novella and cast Arnold Schwarzenegger as the main actor. I thought this was really annoying. But eventually, I went and watched the movie, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's very, very entertaining. It adapts the novella in a really intelligent and amusing way, and it's got some great sequences in it. I love the bit where Arnold Schwarzenegger pulls that great big bogey out of his nose. It's actually some kind of probe, but it looks like a great big bogey. That's quite amusing. And also that wonderful sequence where the guy comes in and tells him, "Look, you're in a dream," and he starts to sweat, and that's how Schwarzenegger knows that he's not telling the truth or whatever. I like that scene. At number 8, The Terminator. This is yet another movie I had a downer on because of my phobia of Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I didn't watch it for years. And eventually, when I was at university, I went with some mates to watch Terminator 2, and I had a thoroughly enjoyable evening watching all these fantastic special effects. So I decided to go back and watch the original, and I found that it was a really good, clean, raw, intelligent, low budget sci-fi actioner. Actually, I think better than the second film. And I thought it was brilliantly paced and edited and shot, and I absolutely loved it. So it was a great movie, and I should have gone to see it, when I was 12 at the time. At number 7 is Escape from New York. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. And if you like John Carpenter, if you like the style of John Carpenter, his visual style, his editing, Dean Cundy's beautiful cinematography, the use of music, this is catnip. I think perhaps stylistically, with the possible exception of Halloween, Carpenter's most satisfying film. I think in terms of storyline and ideas, I think The Thing and The Fog are more beautiful, but Escape from New York is great fun. I love that scene at the end when they're going across the bridge and you can see the headlights of the cars zigzagging through the wreckage. Great cast. I mean, Harry Dean Stanton's in it. Donald Pleasance is in it. Brilliant idea, superb idea that in the future New York has been cordoned off and be made into a gigantic prison. You just dump people in it, and then the president happens to fall into it, and they have to get Pliskin, Snake, to go in there. Great idea, great cast. Kurt Russell's a great hero, and it's a thoroughly entertaining film. In sixth place, The Empire Strikes Back. Now, I know Star Wars fans will go, what? He's saying this is an action movie. It's far superior to that. But to me, it's an action film. Now, most Star Wars fans, when pushed, will say that The Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars film. And I agree. But why? The reason is, guys, it's because the baddies win, right? That's why people like The Empire Strikes Back. That's what makes it interesting. I mean, no one likes Luke Skywalker. He's a git. So anything where Luke Skywalker ends really upset at the end is a win-win, isn't it, really? And then, of course, it's got Yoda in it as well. And good he is. I like Yoda a lot. So, and also, Empire Strikes Back, I think, in the Star Wars series, one of the reasons why it's so good is visually, it's so dynamic and interesting and original. So you start on Hoth, the ice planet, and there's that wonderful scene where Luke has to hide himself in the innards of this beast to keep warm, which seemed so original to me when I was a kid. And then you have the wonderful scene across the battle scene across the ice planet with this wonderful design of these huge tanks that walk like dogs. It was that kind of visual imagination that I think really turned people onto the Star Wars series in the first place. Then later Han Solo gets frozen in carbonite. I looked it up. I did a bit of research. It's not liquid nitrogen, it's carbonite. Look it up. And it's a brilliant image of him frozen in this kind of wall, you know. And that kind of imagery is resonant throughout Empire Strikes Back, and why I think it makes it probably the best of the Star Wars series. I actually quite like Return of the Jedi. I hear some people have a downer on it because of the Ewoks. But the motorbike sequence through the trees is fantastic. So that'll suit me. Fifth place, okay. Now, this is the one I was dreading a bit, but I'm going to go for it. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now, bear with me. There is a reason for this. This is the one we're supposed to hate nowadays, isn't it? We're supposed to loathe this one. But I don't. I have a nostalgia for it, and I'll try and tell you why. I was at school at that age. I was about 12 years old, and the group of us in our year, we won an award. And the headmaster took us on a day out. Very special it was. So we go off in this little minibus, and the first place we go to is the local swimming baths, and we can even use the water slide. Exciting stuff. And then we went to a motorway cafe and had something to eat. The headmaster had done a deal. He knew the bloke behind the counter, so he got the food cheap. But we were really excited by it. And then the final treat of this day out was to go to the local cinema and watch a movie. And that movie was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I'd never been to a cinema with loads of my friends before at the same time. And I hadn't seen, for some reason, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it was all completely new to me. And we had a blast. I pitied the other people in the cinema. We were laughing and shouting and cheering, just like in the old days, you know, in the 1940s, when people went to see Buck Rogers, you know, or cowboy movies and cheered the hero and booed the villain. We did all that stuff. And you know, the roller coaster scene at the end, it really did feel like a roller coaster. It was great fun. I mean, I don't care whether it's a good movie or a bad movie. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and I have huge nostalgia for that screening. I don't think I've ever actually sat and watched the whole movie all the way through ever again, weirdly enough. I really like the third movie, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That's really a lot better. But I have huge nostalgia for Temple of Doom. But of course, the best of the series, and my fourth place in this list, is Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I eventually got to see on video, and which I absolutely loved. I love Raiders of the Lost Ark because it ticks all my boxes. It's about archaeologists looking in ancient tomes for secrets, going to lost cities in the jungle or in the desert, you know, links back to occult and biblical history. I mean, I love all this stuff. It's absolute catnip to me. Harrison Ford is a great hero, and it's directed with Spielberg's flair and, you know, attention for story detail and big set piece moments. It's a great movie, and I still think it ranks up there as one of the best action movies. But now we get to my top three. Now at number 3 is Predator. Oh my God, I love this movie so much, while believing at the same time that it is utterly ridiculous. Predator is the most unsubtle movie ever made. You know, from the it's all incredibly macho to an extreme. So the music is it's so unsubtle, and it starts off with helicopters whirring across the jungle, you know, and then you have Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers meeting up, and they sort of do this bromance hug, and the camera sort of focuses on the sinews of their muscles, and they're sort of admiring each other. You know, it's hilarious. And I love all this stuff. It's very amusing to me. The story is great that there's some kind of alien in the jungle that's hunting humans like we would hunt big game. And in the middle of all this, great special effects for its time, great action sequences, lots of people being blown up and flying in slow motion through midair, which always amuses me. But there's one great sequence in this film, my favourite sequence in the film. It involves an actor called Bill Duke, and he's just lost his best mate, right? Who has a wonderful line. He goes, "If you go in there, you're going into a world of hurt." I loved that line when I was a teenager. So his mate has just died, and Bill Duke has this moonlight soliloquy where he's going, "It's just me and you, man. In the jungle, yeah. It's just you and me." And he's really going for it. You know, this actor, he's got his one chance. This is his chance in this major Hollywood action movie, and he really goes for it. I've got the soliloquy, I've got the big, sad moment, and he's in the moonlight. He should have got a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for that, because he really grabs his moment and he really goes for it. It's hilarious. I absolutely adore it. It's a very funny movie, Predator. It's machismo. It's machismo to an extreme. It's very funny, and it's also great fun, great adventure. At number two, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. Now, I have to be honest, I don't much care for the first Mad Max film. It's not so much of an action film, it's more of a mood piece, actually. And I never really liked it very much. Mad Max 2 is a very different movie. It really is an action movie. There's very little dialogue. In fact, I think I read somewhere that it's the film that has the least lines of dialogue up to that point. And I had to subtitle it as part of my job, and I can tell you there's very little dialogue in it, which is great. And this is where George Miller, the director, really comes into his own. He's an extremely kinetic director. He loves editing and throwing the camera around and speed and motion. And I can tell you now, watching Mad Max 2, this is the kind of film that makes you want to go out and make a movie. Well, after you've watched it, you just want to grab a camera, go out with your mates and make a movie. It's got that sense of joy about it. You almost sort of forget about the story, and you're just enjoying watching this kind of ballet of cars and metal and steel and tyres in this red, red dust of the Australian outback. It's absolutely gorgeous. When George Miller came back with Mad Max Fury Road, at first I had a bit of a downer on it because there was a use of special effects, and I quite liked the kinetic stunt work and realism of Mad Max 2. I've since come round to Mad Max Fury Road. It is a great movie in its own right, but my heart belongs to Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. That final chase sequence with the tanker is absolutely incredible. But my number one 80s action movie, you knew what it was going to be, Aliens. Now, I'm not the greatest fan of James Cameron, but credit where credit is due, this is an outstanding film, and he directs it brilliantly. Though I must say that all these comments are about the original studio cut, and not his later rather baggy director's cut, where I think it was right to lose all that stuff with Newt at the beginning, and just to discover Newt as this sort of vagrant girl halfway through the movie. I think that was better, and to cut all the stuff with Ripley and her daughter, because I think that's better left unsaid and just implicit. So I prefer the studio cut, and the studio cut is so beautifully paced. You see, what happens is the start of the movie, we forget, is actually very slow. We find Ripley on board this ship, she's brought back to Earth, we go through the sort of aftermath of Alien, the first film, then we go on this mission to this planet, we have the drop down, we have the initial discovery. It's all very slow and somber and oppressive. And then suddenly, Cameron and his screenwriters, they go for broke. It's really brave. What they do is there's nothing. There's a very, very, very slow build up, and then suddenly they just throw all the aliens at once in one set piece scene. Incredibly brave. All the aliens attack at once, and everyone's been getting killed, and most of the characters die in that first sequence. That's very brave. And from that moment, from the moment that Sigourney Weaver gets hold of that little tank thing, the movie just bang! It runs like fury, and it's fantastically exciting. The rhythm of it is amazing. It's a brilliant piece of filmmaking, of genre filmmaking, and I have to give Cameron huge credit for it. What's also so great about Alien, let's say it right now, Sigourney Weaver as Ripley. Ripley is one of the best characters in film science fiction. And what's interesting about that is, who is Ripley? She's not a superwoman, right? She's not an alien. She's just an ordinary woman doing her job. And that's why she's such a good character. If you think back to Alien, if you look at Alien without, we know about Alien, the Alien series is really famous now, but if you try and look at it for the first time, Ripley's character should be the least sympathetic character. She's the job's worth. She's the person who's going by the law, saying you shouldn't have let him in because it says here and you shouldn't have done that. She could be the most brittle and cold character, but it's precisely her strong work ethic and her pragmatism that makes her the most sympathetic character and why she wins in the end. And that's why she's such an interesting character. And that pragmatism, that realism, that down-to-earthness of Ripley comes into Aliens. And Sigourney Weaver adds to it her own strength and idiosyncrasy as a personality. She really is brilliant in the part. I think it's a great shame that she didn't get awarded for it. She gives a much better performance than you find in most action movies. And she's an intrinsic part of the whole, Alien series. I love her to bits, basically, is what I'm saying, right? I love her so much. Aliens is a great movie. I've seen it about 30 times. I still get excited in the exciting bits. I still get scared in the scary bits. It's absolutely fantastic. And it is my favourite 80s action movie. Have I missed any out? That's my list. Please let me know what you think about those films below. If there's any I've missed out, please let me know. Die Hard is from 1990, and I don't like it anyway. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this list. And if you like my content, please like and subscribe. Thanks very much.